Hey, we're back at the top again today with another awkward video. Why is it awkward? You'll see in a second. Now, the Generation 7 has had its last entry. I think it's time to look back on it as a whole and see what we learned from it. To see what Game Freak has been doing in the background and where it might take us in Generation 8 on the Switch. We've got 10 facts to cover, so we have a lot to talk about, from competitive to even smaller, unnoticed aspects. Get ready, because we're diving into the 10 things we learned from the games Pokemon Sun and Moon, Pokemon Ultra Sun and Moon, in Generation 7. With the release of Pokemon Sun and Moon, the community was excited at the thought of new possible Mega Evolutions. We knew about Z-moves, the powered-up attacks, but after 2 sets of games introducing more Megas, we all hoped for even just a handful, or maybe just a few. Well, what we got is nothing. It seemed all their focus was on wasn't Megas, but Z-moves for the powered-up aspect for the game. Does this mean new Megas will never be brought into the game anymore? Does this mean they are being retconned? Maybe. We'll have to see what Generation 8 brings to the table, but as of now, we've learned that Megas are not the primary focus like they once were in the past. In 1999, 2001, 2005, and 2009, we were introduced to Pokemon Yellow, Crystal, Emerald, and Platinum respectively. These were known as third versions, or rather updated versions of the previous pair of games that started each generation off. However, after Pokemon Platinum's release, we failed to see any other third versions. There was a comment from one of the game developers explaining they wanted to be unpredictable, and that they were. Everyone expected Pokemon Gray and Pokemon Z, but neither of the two happened. Until 8 years after the previous version, that is, as Pokemon Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon were released in 2017. That shows that Game Freak didn't discontinue the idea of third versions, they just tabled them. We've learned that they truly want to be unpredictable, and that they can throw any sort of possibility at us. With the start to Generation 7, new moves, abilities, and Pokemon were released. Many Pokemon had some good combinations of the three, but something I did notice was the numerous new features that were tilted toward the VGC metagame. Perfect example is Oranguru and Passimian, who had a bunch of ways to have an effect on the VGC games. It's a shame they were basically left in the dust, however, as they were way better Pokemon that were used instead. However, we've learned that the developers really are trying their best to introduce new VGC options to the game. With the lack of addition for Mega Evolutions, we saw the introduction to Z-moves, which are powered-up versions of moves depending on what move it's based from. There are also signature Z-moves for certain Pokemon. So when the updated versions of Pokemon Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon came out, we got a bunch of brand new signature Z-moves. Now, this might be cheating the topic a bit, but what we learned here is that from Generation 6 to 7, is that the new power feature in one generation could be defunct in the next generation in regards to any new additions. So don't be surprised if Z-moves are given worse treatment in Generation 8. Another topic cheat, but fool me once, shame on me, fool me twice, shame on you. In Generation 5, we were introduced to 156 new Pokemon, bringing the total up to 651 Pokemon in the National Dex. However, in Generation 6, we only got 72 new Pokemon, bringing us to 721 Pokemon. Also in Generation 7, we only got introduced to 86 new Pokemon, some of which were not introduced until the middle of the generation in Pokemon Ultra Sun and Moon. The latter of these facts is telling to our situation. We're probably not going to see 100 plus Pokemon introduced in a generation ever again. We are currently sitting at 807 Pokemon, so I can understand, because we're nearing that 1,000 Pokemon mark. It's been theorized that since Generation 6, there has been a multiverse introduced into the Pokemon world. Generations 1 through 5 are in one universe, while Generations 6 through 7 sit in the Mega Universe. The main key of evidence lies in the post-game of Pokemon Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, the Rainbow Rocket arc. Giovanni himself is from a different universe, since he was victorious with his plans. But he also has a Mega Mewtwo as well, so he isn't the previous Giovanni from the Generation 1 through 5 universe. Not only that, but he managed to bring all the previous villains from each evil team to Alola with him, so looking at how many there are, that's at least a total of 8 different universes in the Pokemon world. This is something we've learned, but will Game Freak take advantage of this? With the introduction to the fairy type in Generation 6, it was telling that they wanted to nerf the dragon type. And it was true, it did take an effect on said type. But then in Generation 7, they added fairy types by the barrel. 20 total fairy type families were added in Generation 6, but in Generation 7, we got 10 more, including 4 legendary fairy types. They really want to expand said type, but it might be overkill. Maybe fairy has surpassed the dragon type as the most overpowered type. Maybe that last comment is controversial. We shall see. Another thing added in Generation 6 was the terrains. You had grassy, misty, and electric terrain. But they weren't used much since the only way to bring them into play was to use the move that activated them. However, in Generation 7, we learned that they wanted the terrains to play more of a role. They wanted more than just the weather effects. With the introduction to the 4 island guardians, Tapu Koko, Lele, Bulu, and Feeny, we were able to have a Pokemon that would activate the terrain on release. We also got a new terrain, Psychic Terrain, added in for Tapu Lele to give each one a signature ability. The main thing that we learned story-wise was that the developers are truly willing to try new things. 6 generations of battling 8 gyms, defeating an evil team, and becoming champion ran a little bit old, so instead, they scrapped that idea in this generation for the trials, where instead of battling gym trainers and its leader, you had to accomplish a task and defeat the totem Pokemon, which is a more powered-up version of any other Pokemon. Not only that, but the evil team, Team Skull, wasn't even the main villains in the game. And even in the updated versions of Ultra Sun and Moon, the 8th Year Foundation doesn't look as evil as it once did in the originals. Keep this in mind next time you try to accuse Game Freak of recycling ideas. Are they truly running out of ideas? Is that why they're recycling them? This is what I hear year in and year out. Since Generation 4, I've heard this complaint many times.
Alright, let's see here. We get time and space, every human emotion, every natural element, and nature itself, life and death. What do we go for next?
Only one place left to go. We go for God.
Wait, no, we got that one too.
But here we are on the doorstep of Generation 8, and Pokemon is still going strong. This next fact ties in with the last one. They're willing to try new things, so they don't run out of ideas. Climate adaptations of former Pokemon? Those became Alolan forms, which were entirely different Pokemon with new types, abilities, and moves. Ultra Beasts were created, maybe due to the developers having the leeway to let their imaginations run wild, and then they gave us a ton of new Pokemon families to top it all off. No, they are not running out of ideas, and this generation proves that. They're coming up with many new ways to introduce new Pokemon, and I don't see that changing once Generation 8 is in our hands. With that, those are the 10 things we learned from Generation 7. Did you learn something else? Well, let me know what you learned from this generation in the comment section below. We'll do more speculation on Generation 8 once possible details come about, but for now, we'll divulge into more about Pokemon in general and about Generation 7. If you enjoyed, don't forget to drop a like from the top and subscribe, because without your support, we can't learn anything else. And we want to learn. It's a good thing. With that, I want to thank you for watching, and I'm going to catch you back at the top later on, because that's how we do what?